Far-right candidate Norbert Hofer has lost Austria's presidential election. On Facebook, he described himself as infinitely sad and congratulated Alexander Van der Bellen, former head of the Greens, on his victory. Although the post is ceremonial in Austria, the poll had been seen as a sign of how well populist candidates might do elsewhere in Europe. Mr Van der Bellen called the result a vote for a pro-European Austria based on freedom, equality and solidarity. Referring to the Austrian flag, he said a red-white-red signal of hope and change. A red-white-red signal today goes from Austria to all the capitals of the European Union. Finally, I will try to be an open-minded, a liberal-minded and first of all a pro-European federal president of the Republic of Austria. Sunday's vote was a rerun of May's election, which Mr Van der Bellen narrowly won but was marred by postal vote irregularities. He said there had been significant changes, Brexit, the US election, since then, along with an increase in political interest, an enormously broad electoral movement. His margin in May, 30,000 votes, had now increased tenfold. European Union leaders have been welcoming the result, which comes amid fears of populism undermining established parties. European Council President Donald Tusk conveyed wholehearted congratulations while Germany's Social Democrat Vice-Chancellor, Sigmar Gabriel, called the result a clear victory for reason against right-wing populism. French President François Hollande thanked Austria for choosing Europe and openness. France, the Netherlands and Germany all face elections next year in which anti-mainstream and anti-immigration parties are gaining ground. The sigh of relief at the outcome of Austria's presidential election was very loud indeed in Brussels, with most European leaders delighted that the EU and establishment-friendly, internationalist-minded Mr Van der Bellen will become president. But voters in Austria, as across much of Europe and in the US, were divided. There weren't many percentage points between the presidential candidates. So there will be disappointment tonight, too, amongst those who support a more nationalist-minded, anti-globalization, immigration-limiting point of view. If we've learned one thing from Brexit and the US elections, it's that voters are in an unpredictable mood. Anti-establishment sentiment is on the rise, but election victories for Europe's so-called populists are far from inevitable. But the Austrian results surprised many. Opinion polls in the run-up to Sunday's vote suggested the result was too close to call. Projections now give Mr Van der Bellen roughly 53% to 46% for Mr Hofer. The election campaign ahead of Sunday's vote was bitter, with both candidates trading insults and election posters being defaced. Mr Hofer, the candidate for the Anti-Immigration Freedom Party, conceded within minutes of the first projections in this rerun. He thanked supporters and described himself as infinitely sad that it hasn't worked out. He called on all Austrians to work together, regardless of how we cast our ballots. Mr Hofer had campaigned on an anti-immigration platform amid disquiet in Austria at an influx of refugees. Establishment parties feared the victory for him could give a boost to the Freedom Party in the next parliamentary election. He had also suggested Austria could follow Britain's vote to leave the EU with a referendum of its own, but later appeared to backtrack, suggesting instead changing the bloc into a purely economic association. The leader of France's anti-immigration Front National, Marine Le Pen, congratulated the Freedom Party on its campaign and looked forward to victory in Austria's parliamentary poll. Full official results are not expected until Monday once postal ballots have been counted. Nearly 6.5 million Austrians were eligible to vote.